leaving home one morning. You may have left for school, work, the gym, an appointment, but by the end of the day, not being able to go home again. When leaving home, none of us stop to think that we may not return. One day, I didn't return. Instead, I found myself in a cold, dim, 6x8 prison cell. Confined under lock and key, I didn't see natural sunlight for weeks, and I didn't have access to a clock. Many times, I was allowed 1 or 2 showers a week and ate a variety of mysterious entrees. 279 nights later, sitting on the floor of my cell, I told myself, Kishana, get up and move. I was stuck. I was stuck physically. Kishana, I repeated, get up and move. Stuck. I was stuck mentally and emotionally, stuck on the cold, concrete floor. That night, I stared into the concrete thinking, maybe if I stared long and intently enough, the floor would crack and separate, allowing me to dig myself a pathway out of this. Stuck. Paralyzed in my situation. My internal voice continued to speak. Kishana, distract yourself. Just count the blocks. How many blocks make up the walls of this cell? Be sure to count them softly, though, so that your cellie won't hear you. 5, 10, 15, 16. I couldn't distract myself anymore. My internal clock says it's approximately 11 p.m. of Friday night, October 2009. OP 8742. Who am I? Am I Kishana? Or am I my prison number? No one looks like me. This place feels like a strange land. And at age 19, life beyond my sentence feels impossible. Loneliness. But I'm not alone. I'm sharing this cell with a stranger whom I've been told to refer to as my cellie. Shame and guilt. This was my dark place. And at that point, I had 1,546 days left to go. My talk, though, isn't about what led me to incarceration. It's about how I survived it and stand before you today. How did I survive it? Well, it was my faith in God. Also, it was 3 simple but amazing words: good, better, best, that my grandparents taught me when I was a child. Hopefully, you won't make a mistaken judgment that leads to prison, but all of us have likely found ourselves, at one point or another, in what seems an impossible situation. For me, after a period of anger, confusion, mourning, and processing, I had to ask myself, how can I make my situation better? Isn't that what we do? When we find ourselves feeling tired of being stuck, my situation was no longer okay with me. But I was lucky. I suddenly remembered about good, better, best. And that lifted me up. In that moment, those 3 words gave me hope. They felt comforting and promising when I heard my voice say out loud, good, better, best. Inside, I heard the voices of my grandparents. My grandfather was a stage manager at Boston Symphony Hall. I grew up visiting him there and enjoying its elegant yet warm Bostonian atmosphere. Every holiday season, he would receive a few comp tickets to the Boston Pops concert. And I remember how my aunt would get me all dressed up. Often, it was in a big puffy velvet dress. I also remember entering or approaching the huge decorative entrance of the historic hall, feeling such gratitude that I, the granddaughter of an immigrant, was able to experience this space year after year. My grandfather frequently worked double shifts, and some nights he would return home around 10 p.m., and on nights when I couldn't sleep, I'd hear him open the door. I'd often run down the steps to greet him, and although it was obvious he'd had a long day, I'd ask anyhow, "Grandfather, how was your day?" He'd often barely raise his hand to gesture. Good, better, best. My grandmother worked at New England Medical, now called Tufts Medical Center, and Grandma loves the news. When I was younger and we would hang out in the kitchen, I'd do my homework, she'd cook Jamaican food. We would talk. We would talk about the news, her work, some of her ups and downs. But when talking to Grandma about a problem, she would often say to me, "Honey, this is for now. There is a good, a better, and a best." And then she would go on to explain how she was learning to find the good in her situation because she knew that one day she'd experience better. While stuck on the floor, I remembered her words, but I felt overwhelmed by my pain and current circumstance. I couldn't move. I was stuck. My pain weighed so heavily that I did not have the joy, the desire, or the will to move or go on. And then I thought to myself, Kishana, this cell is for now. I look at good, better, best as stages of possibility. In any situation where we find ourselves, we can make a choice by determining our thoughts, feelings, attitude. And we could start to consider what good would look like, for example. And what small steps we can begin with to improve that situation. Then possibly what better could look like. In defining my good, I took a deep look at what I was currently feeling and experiencing and knew that anything better than this would be okay with me. It would be good. And when I'm experiencing my good, my better would be a bit more improved. So, my cell was on a housing unit staffed by Officer Cedric. He followed policy, was consistent, orderly, fair, and very strict about room checks. He told us that if someone was unable to care for a small dimension cell, how could that person then be able to care for and maintain a bigger space. When Officer Cedric wasn't working, his words still echoed in my mind. This echo led me to form a routine of cleaning my cell daily, a task completed by means of unwrapping a sanitary napkin to stick it to the palm of my hands to sweep and mop the prison floor, a technique used by many inmates. I made my bed daily, I wiped my metal desk. My cellie and I would rotate the task of cleaning our toilet. I needed my cell to be my safe haven, my space within a facility where I had control over very, very little. Taking pride in my space contributed to my mental health. This was good. This space was good for the time being. Also, Officer Cedric gave me a nickname. He referred to me as Smitty. Given the fact that inmates weren't usually addressed or given nicknames, positive ones, by correctional officers, I asked him why he continuously referred to me as Smitty. He explained that although I walked the prison, and I remember this day, I was in the corner cell. He said, although I walk the prison, he feels as though I am different. And that his way, him calling me Smitty, is his way of letting me know that I'm all right with him. In those moments when Officer Cedric called me Smitty, I felt human and capable of more than what my situation was telling me. Inmates also hold prison jobs. When I learned this, I applied for the HVAC crew because heating, ventilation, air conditioning fascinates me. One day, I received a crinkled white slip sheet of paper pushed through the slot of my cell door, informing me that my application to the crew had been approved. I was happy, even joyful. I would be making 43 cents a day. Also, we were in an all-women's prison, but I was the most female presenting one on the crew. And it seemed as though crew members assumed I knew nothing. I was reluctantly selected to help with jobs. I was never the first, second, or even third pick when it came to being selected for a difficult task. Another challenge was the HVAC crew technician. He often mumbled very confusing directions and oftentimes wouldn't repeat himself, ignoring how much I really wanted to learn. I did want to learn. And when I became frustrated, tired of feeling stuck, I decided to buy myself an HVAC textbook so I could teach myself. I studied hard, read many hours, I worked hard. Eventually, I became an HVAC technician. I began to see the respect shift on the crew. It was odd that when crew members had questions, they began coming to me now. This felt great. I was striving for better. At times, though, I would circle back to feeling stuck, back to telling myself, Kishana, get up and move. I was repressing my feelings. I was slipping into another dark place, and this scared me. But this time, I wasn't stuck for long. Day 1,895, and yes, I was still counting, of being incarcerated. I made a huge decision. I decided to enroll in the House of Healing, which was a program within the prison specific for survivors of domestic violence and sexual assault. The housing unit for this program looked like a house. The other housing units looked like industrial warehouses or trailers. The feel of just looking at this unit gave me hope. I went into the program. I was hesitant because I was sexually abused as a child. And going into this program meant that I would finally have to do the internal work that my spirit was crying for me to do. But I did that work. And after 10 long months, I graduated. And I remember the day I was packing up to leave the housing unit for another unit within general population, but something really important happened. The director and mentor of the program asked me if I would consider staying on to offer peer facilitation and be a mentor to the other ladies. I was like, me? She wanted me. And in that moment, I felt important. In that moment, the internal work that I did for myself felt greater. I said yes. I lived on the housing unit for another almost 2 years, and I was able to continue my love for shared spaces, shared community, housing, and healing. I am living proof that safety can provide healing. It is often not until primary needs are met, such as food, water, shelter, and our bodies physically feel safe, that our hearts and minds can begin to think of rebuilding and repairing. That was true for me. It's been 8 years since I've been working with survivors of domestic violence. I'm currently employed at 2 nonprofit organizations working to end domestic violence and partner abuse. Each day when I get up, I strive to show up for survivors the way Officer Cedric showed up for me. Being in that program, I was able to find my passion. This would be my passion that would lead my work after prison. I was doing okay. I was doing better. I was in prison for 5 years. When I let go of my shame of being there, I allowed myself to learn and grow using the 3 words. If I wanted good, I needed to define what my good would look like, set goals, make a shift, and figure out how I would get there. Good helped me to consider what better would look like. I haven't been able to make it to a Boston Holiday Pops concert lately, but I do talk often to my grandparents. And although he's usually not feeling well, he still asks how I'm doing. I usually smile from my side of the phone and say, "Well, grandfather, I'm thankful I listened to you years ago because I'm appreciating life and at my current best." So, if you are ever feeling stuck, maybe your situation feels impossible, this gift from my childhood, good, better, best, this gift I share with you.